So before I became a teacher, which was 14 years ago now, I worked in the city as a sales director. So that was for a huge company called Sky, which I'm probably sure you've all heard of. So I became the sales director when I was 35 years of age, and I worked at Sky for about 4 years. So obviously I was employed, and the reason I started working for Sky was because my previous company, a smaller company, was actually bought out. So we were acquired by Sky. So it was a big shift, obviously, from a small company to a huge company. In terms of qualifications, there weren't any specific qualifications they were looking for, but general qualification would be, to a degree standard. So I did my degree in sports science way back in the mid-90s, which is obviously a long time ago. So I got a BSc Honours, and I got a 2-1, which is kind of the top degree you can get in that particular field, which set me up nicely for when I moved to London. So working for a big company like I did with Sky, obviously there are some of the skills that I would say are very important are obviously good teamwork, because you're meeting and working with people from lots of different backgrounds to yourself. Communication, obviously, because there's lots of people that you might have a difference of opinion with, for example, but obviously you need to listen to them because you're working with them at the end of the day, and you want a kind of a positive working relationship. So yeah, I would say communication, teamwork, obviously good listening skills. That's crucial, because if you're listening to a client, obviously you need to understand what their client's needs are. So obviously the ability to listen is something that absolutely you would need for a job like that. So a typical day at Sky was an early start, so I'll get in the office for about 8:30, and then normally work all the way through till about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening. A lot of my job to start with was actually taking clients out for lunch, which was great, because obviously we were trying to influence them positively, so they would obviously spend their clients' money with my company, Sky. So yeah, it's a long day, but it wasn't without its rewards. So as I said, lots of client lunches, but it was typically a very long working day. So I think the highlight for me working at Sky was I was responsible for one of the biggest digital deals they did in their history. So it amounted to about £500,000 in the end. So when I say I was responsible, obviously I had an amazing team working around me as well. So we worked probably for about 6 months, kind of convinced the client to obviously spend their money with us. The client was Adidas, so obviously a huge global brand. So that was a huge kind of achievement for the company.
At university, I studied mechanical engineering. This was with automotive design. Part of my course, I was on a thin sandwich. I had a training session at Prestolite, and I did a very long period of time at the Transport Research Laboratory. At that laboratory, what they did was crash test cars. So they would buy new cars, empty out all the fluids, and then they would do a crash test on it. So I was employed there for about 9 months. To get onto the course, I studied A-level maths, physics, and I also studied art at A-level. So you can make sure to get onto the course, you can do maths and physics for A-level and any other subject. If you end up not doing maths and physics, there are access courses or foundation courses to enable you to get onto engineering of any type. So some of the skills that I developed were time management. We would have a Formula One team come in, and they would bring something like the nose cone of one of their vehicles. They would crash test that, and they would want the data straight away so that they could go away and build another one, improve it, and then come back and test it again. So with part of these reports, you can't miss anything out, so I needed attention to detail. And working with different teams and departments, we had to have lots of good communication. So developing language skills was very important. Rather than spending a long time explaining something, you want to condense that into words that say exactly what you need. On a normal day, I'd probably drop in to see which car they were going to work on. Other engineers that were working there, they would hook up the dummies to the car, and this would measure the forces when the car was in the crash test. So part of the day, the car would have all the fluids drained, it would be taken out of the building and attached to a winch. It would get pulled back into a building and smashed into a big concrete block. So what this would do would enable the dummy to pick up all the different forces that were applied to the different parts of the body. So those forces would be then collected together, that information would get sent to me, and as a crash test data analyst, I would collate all of that information to one big report. So these reports would then go forward to the Euro NCAP testing, and they would look at this and decide whether it was a 5-star, very safe car where you wouldn't have any major injuries, or if it was a 1-star, it meant that you would probably have significant injuries, maybe losing a limb or something. One of the highlights of the job was getting to see the latest vehicles, the brand new cars that were coming out that year. So it would be the everyday cars that we see on the road, even including your BMWs and Mercedes, anything that you would be driving at home or your parents would be. And we would get to see the brand new cars, but sadly we would also see them get crashed. But seeing them get crashed is actually very exciting as well.
Hi, I'm Mr. Boniface. I'm an English teacher here at Woodside High School. I was a journalist before coming to Woodside for 3 years. I was a news reporter for a number of different organisations, including a local paper, the Ham and High, a national website, Mail Online, and also a court reporting agency called Central News. I was employed both as a freelancer and by the newspaper themselves. So I had a range of roles and had a great time. So I came out of school with GCSEs, then A-levels, and then I went on to university, the University of Bath, to study an undergraduate degree in sports science. So something completely different to journalism, but which gave me the grounding to then go on and achieve a qualification. After university at Bath, I studied a postgraduate diploma, specifically in journalism, which gave me the skills to become a journalist and become a part of the industry. So a typical day in the life as a journalist for me, I would be writing news articles. So I would be, at the beginning of the day, speak to my editor. We'd find out what kind of stories I should be writing about. So as a news reporter, I was reporting on what was going on around me. So was there a crime story? Was there a story to do with schools? Was there a local political story that we needed to write, or that I needed to write up for that newspaper? So I'd have a meeting with the editor, and I'd go off and I'd write the articles that I needed for that day. And as part of those articles, I would speak to various different people. I might speak to the police, for example. I might speak to a local resident. I might speak to a head teacher to help me write that article, and in order to then share that article on social media, through Twitter, through Facebook, to send it out to as many people as possible. So the skills I primarily learned as a journalist were based around communication. I was talking to a huge range of people in society as part of my day-to-day job, reporting on the news. So I learned how to speak with people, how to communicate with people, both on the phone or in person, or also in writing. I learned how to communicate clearly in terms of news articles, so writing, whether that be for the newspaper or for online. But I learned how to basically act around other people, and then how to put those interactions I had down onto paper for the articles. The highlight of my job was interviewing some really interesting, amazing people. So, for example, I interviewed Gareth Southgate, the manager of the England football team. I managed Keir Starmer, who is the leader of the Labour Party and potentially the next Prime Minister. I interviewed Michael Rosen, the poet from Muswell Hill, who's written books and poems such as We're Going on a Bear Hunt. He in particular was a very interesting interview because he was in intensive care with coronavirus for 47 days, and I spoke to him after his experience of that to see what it was like being so close to death and then having this new lease of life. So I think the highlight of my job was speaking to these people